Hey guys, welcome back to my world of modeling and the workbench. Dan here as always, and in this video I wanted to keep the theme of unique prototypes, detailing, and things like that since we just looked at the epic spine cars that I just built. Since that video I've built a couple more, but I wanted to keep in the theme of detailing and working on unique prototypes. And I have another good one for you. This is something I just recently picked up, and this is a Conrail ballast car from Walthers. You guys will remember these because these have the old style two-base chute. Walthers did a relatively good job on the car overall. It's decently detailed. This is one of the oldest runs here, and I just wanted to kind of talk to you guys today about how you take a model like this and basically spruce it up and detail it. Obviously, we all love the quality of models that are coming out now from like Tangent, Exact Rail, Athearn Genesis series, things like that, where they have the air hoses, coupler lift bars, all those nice bells and whistles. But what do you do when you get a car like this where maybe it's a unique prototype that no one else makes in these kinds of lines with the high detail? A model like this has potential to be nice, but it just kind of maybe lacks the detail. Obviously, you can see here the ladders are a bit more chunky. They're not as scaled down compared to separately applied grab irons. The photo etch walkways are nice, but these ones here on this model are plastic. So it leaves a little bit to be desired, basically. But there's ways you can approach a model like this and dress it up, and that's actually what I kind of want to make a quick video about here. So when I get a model like this, I basically buy it for a particular purpose, and in this case I'm doing some FURX patched ballast cars, some fictional ballast cars that I want to load up, rust up, and make look kind of nice. And I've gotten 4 of these. I'm waiting for the other 3 to come in, but we have a good model to start with, and I want to talk about detailing it, and then I'll show you guys the weathering and patching that I later do to it. So it kind of comes down to a matter of how much do you really want to detail it up, what all are you trying to add, and in this case I'm kind of keeping it simple. I'm going to add some basic details like grab irons, I'm going to add a couple of lift bars and air hoses, and I will show you how to do all that. And the first thing we got to do is make some grab irons for the end. I guess primarily what I really want to focus on is the end detail work, because that's where it really lacks. Stuff like underbody piping on this car you can get away with, just because with this kind of style of car most of it's hidden through the beam, and so you don't really see most of that. Some cars I might do some brake detail work, like box cars for example, or like Walthers tank cars are good candidates because those have all that exposed where it's more noticeable. A car like this, I'm not going to worry about it too much. If you want to go into that level of detail, of course you can. But really what I want to focus on is adding air hoses, a couple of lift bars, dressing up the details, basic stuff like that. The first thing I want to notice here is that there should be a grab iron on these cars. It's pretty much standard to have a walkway platform on a car like this, any kind of hopper car, box car, and there'll generally be a long handrail that runs between these stanchions, and it's generally going to be about 2 or 3 steps up in terms of height, and it's going to be about the size of a man. So it's going to be for handling across, being able to walk across this platform as something to hold on to and then access that. So all these cars should have that, and these models do not. So that's the first thing I want to focus on. And your best friend for being able to detail stuff like this is brass wire. Any kind of fine wire will work really well for this kind of thing. And what I'm going to be using is, well, if I can pull it into the shot here, is some 020 inch phosphor bronze. I recommend 015 inch too. 015 is a little finer. However, I am not going to be able to use this today because, as you can see, I'm shit out pretty much. So 020 is going to be the next best thing. It's a little bit thicker, but in comparison to the grab irons, the other reason I'm choosing it is because everything else on this model is already pretty thick. If you start putting fine detail, then stuff starts to kind of look awkward, where you have really thick parts and then really thin profile parts. So it is something to kind of keep in mind. That being said, there are some other things I want to change that still might benefit from a little bit of better detail. I might change this brake wheel out because, as you can see, the brake wheel is a little bit different. It should be a more smaller, I guess, profile brake wheel. Stuff like that I might change if I have the parts, so that's what I'm going to be focusing on. But the first thing we need to do is actually make the wire for the ends. And again, I'm going to be using 020 inch phosphor bronze wire. Basically with that kind of wire you just take some pliers and you can bend some parts to size, and I'll cut it and shape it, and I'll show you guys what it looks like once I've gotten the... This is the rough piece once I've actually shaped it and formed it. And basically what I do is I take the piece of wire and I match where it needs to be in terms of the starting point being this area on the grab the grab iron, excuse me, and I'll just bend it there, stretch it across, and then find the next place where I need to bend it, which in this case would be right here. I match that size to my piece like this, and then bend it out, and that's what we end up coming out with, is that. So that's the rough bent shape, and then it's just roughly cut to size. The fine-tuned piece is a little bit more refined, where I filed off the ends and I've cut them down a little bit more, so it's a much better size fit, and there's not any flash sticking out. So as you can see, once we take it and transfer it to the model, it'll just fit right on quite simply. And it's designed to basically fit over these little pieces here, so it'll work out real nice. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that in place, and I'll show you guys what that looks like. When applying parts like this, I like to just take a pair of pliers like this to hold the part properly, and I'll almost always secure these parts with super glue, and in this case I'm just taking it directly out of the bottle. This is just medium grade cyanoacrylate adhesive, so just put a little dab at the end to start. Don't saturate the part in glue. We'll add a little bit more glue to this later. What we really need to do right now is just get it to tack. So what we're going to do is we're going to position it roughly like this, and you're going to want to make sure you hold on to it, because it's not going to want to stick right away. You got to make sure that you hold it down, keep a little bit of pressure on it, and make sure it's not sliding or anything like that. As you can see, it's really trying to fight. You just want to make sure that it's not moving around, it's not trying to fight you. You want to make sure it's staying in place. So I'm just going to hold it roughly without putting too much pressure on it. I just want it to hold in place, at least for a little bit. And it might help if you just kind of leave it alone and let it set up a little bit, which is what I'll probably do just for a second like this. Just kind of let it set up, let it do its thing. And in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and bring a piece of wire like this as my main gluing stick, and I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more glue. I want to add it to these center posts to support it a little bit further. The wire is really nice because it's basically a precision applicator for your glue, because obviously trying to take a bottle of glue like this and take it right to the model, you're going to get a lot more glue on the area than you really need. This gets the glue exactly where it needs to be, basically. So it's a little bit easier. It's a handy little trick if you're going to get into scratch building. And as you can see, it's trying to move, so let's stop it. You see how it tried to get away from me there? That's alright. We got it ahead. We were able to stop it anyway. There we go. And I'll take a little bit more glue. Just put a drop on there. Try not to come directly in contact with it. Just going to put a little dab there. Okay. So, we now have that on, and it's important to just kind of let that set up for a little bit. And right off the rip, it already adds a little bit more detail to the model having that grab iron. It is a small detail, but it really does improve the look. We also have the brake end here, and I've went ahead and removed the chunky oversized brake wheel. I'm going to replace it with a titchy brake wheel, and if I can grab the little piece here in the corner, that's the part I'm going to be replacing it with, is the titchy black, more modern brake wheel. You can see it's a little bit more detailed, so it'll work a lot better for this model. I'll just basically trim the stem down a little bit, and then I'll install that onto the back of this plate here. You can of course re-drill this out, but in this case, because I'm not going to be handling this and because the glue will hold it pretty well, I'm just going to butt joint it. So I'm just going to trim the stem down basically by taking this piece here, pair of nail clippers, or you can use a knife, whichever. I'm going to trim that stem down a little bit. Let me see if that will... Yeah, that's a pretty good cut. Okay. Now you can either use super glue for this, or you can use plastic cement. In this case I'm going to use plastic weld to start. And this will get the piece tacked on pretty well, and it'll set up relatively quickly. I'm just going to take it and apply a little bit of plastic cement to this area. Let's take our tweezers, and we'll move it over, and we're going to put the brake wheel exactly where the old one used to be. And we're just going to kind of center it. And again, it's another part, because these Walthers cars are very slippery plastic. Also remember, I haven't dull coated this. Just hold the part in place and just kind of let it tack up a little bit. We can always go and add a little bit more glue in a minute, but right now this primary focus is to just get the part centered where it needs to be and let it set up a little bit before we start doing the final positioning. As you can see, it's in a pretty good spot. Let's go ahead and start fine-tuning that position. We need to move it down. Oh, not much, just a little bit. There it goes. Get it centered as best you can. If it's a little crooked, remember in the real life these things get beat up, they get bent up. And it's okay if it's a little crooked. Okay, there we go. Now what I'm going to do, let's set that down. We have the plastic cement setting up. Let's go ahead and take a fine needle applicator, a little bit of glue, again on the end. Let's see here. There we go. And we're just going to take it to the model and apply it like that. And that's it. So now we have two parts installed just that quick. We'll let those set up and then we'll move to the non-break end. For the other basic detail parts on this model, I'm going to be using two tangent couple lift bars. These are the modern style, and if I bring the package in here, this is the style I'm using. Couple lift bars, type 2, 5 pairs. There's your item number if you need them. So that's a good kit there. And then these are just the Tichy brand air hoses. These have the little bits and pieces there for installing. However, I will not be needing those for this particular car. I'm just going to be snipping off the two brake hoses with my knife, and then that's where this piece of wire comes in. This is 0.25-inch phosphor bronze wire rod, and I'm going to be using this to actually make the brake line on the coupler pocket that leads up to the air hose. So we'll cut up size of wire to this, and then we'll glue it on, and then glue the air hose and butt it up to this to make it look like a full air line. And it's going to be on the coupler pockets of this car. But first we need to reinstall the couplers, and in this case it's a good time to go ahead and choose the right coupler that you want, and I'm going to be of course using KD's for this. I'm going to be using double shelf couplers. I'm going to chop off the top, let's see, I'm going to basically take the top shelf off of it just so that it's a lower shelf, because KD does not make a lower shelf coupler, so I just need to modify a pair of those, and then I'm just going to reinstall the coupler pockets once I get the couplers installed, and then I'll be able to actually start installing the brake lines. We'll work on that next. The first thing I'm going to do here on the coupler pocket, you can see I've put the lid back on and the KD coupler is installed. I'm going to run our 0.25-inch pipe for the brake line across the pocket, and it's going to be right on top here at the base of the pocket, just on top of the lid here essentially. And I've taken this piece of 0.25-inch and rough cut it to get a basic idea of where it's going to go. I put it over the coupler pocket, and then I figured that I need about this much space for the air hose to go. So I'm going to make a little mark like this, and I know now where to cut. What I'm going to do first is take a pair of nippers like this, and let's cut that. There we go. Always make sure you hold on to both ends of the wire so you don't have a piece of wire flying this way and the other. It's no fun trying to find a piece of hand-cut wire or grab iron or something like that on a carpeted floor, I'll tell you what. Once you get it cut, it's this end here, then you just take a small file, particularly a metal file like this, and you just basically clean up the end just like this, make it nice and flat. We want a nice clean butt joint here where it looks like it flows together and it's jointed together properly. We don't want to have a piece of flash sticking out there. After we've done that, now we can take another piece of wire, our applicator, and let's go ahead and get a little bit of glue out. In this case my glue's trying to gunk up. There we go. Clear that out. And we'll get a little bit on our applicator like this, and we'll quickly try to run it across like this and stretch it out. Now take our tweezers here, and we'll just position them just like this. Take it over, apply the part to the model quickly here, and then we'll just fine position it real fast just like that. Then we now have the airline installed. I've propped the model up so you can see this a little bit better, but basically I'm going to cut the little stem off the air hose right at the base of the valve like that. So you can see it's a nice fine joint there. And I'm going to take a little bit of glue and we'll just dab a little bit of that on there like that. Again, less is more here. If we need to add more glue later on, we can, but starting off you just need a little bit to start. Position it at the base of that and then attach it to your coupler pocket like this, and then just kind of let it set up on its own. Once this dries up, I'll hit this up with either a little bit more plastic cement or a little bit more CA, and I'll really make sure it's tacked in place thoroughly. In the meantime, while that dries, we're going to go ahead and work on the coupler bracket for the coupler lift bar, our little tangent piece here, and we're going to go ahead and work on that now. Let me get the camera repositioned. Remember, with coupler lift bars, they're always going to be mounted on a specific bracket. And on the Walthers car, there is actually a molded section where they replicated a little mounting pad for said bracket. And how I'm going to actually model this is with a little bit of styrene channel. In this case, this is a fine piece of 0.20-inch styrene sheet formed into an L bracket shape. Structural shapes like this are perfect for these kinds of models because they require just a little bit of fit and finish, and they're very easy to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a little bracket out by taking my X-Acto knife, a fine tip blade, and I'm going to just mark out first where I need it to be cut. And this is a little bit hard because I got a camera right in front of my face, but that's alright. We're just going to position the knife, cut it, and now what I'm going to do, break the back, the little piece off, and we now have a nice little bracket so that we can attach that to the model. And now what I'm going to do, again, take our plastic cement like that. I'm going to move the model over like this. Take a little bit of our plastic cement, we'll hit it up on that bracket just like that. Now remember, with plastic cement you only got a little bit more time to work with compared to super glue. Get that on there, position it as quickly as we can. That didn't really work, so we're going to need to apply a little bit more glue. Like I said, this stuff dries fast, you got to be quick. You got to be quicker than that. And you also just saw there that these things have a tendency to fly, but fortunately we caught it. Alright, now get that little piece on there. Remember, just get it installed first. Fine tuning can come later. Make sure it's installed and it's not going to fall off. Now, with the model turned over, let's fine tune its positioning. Remember that it's got to be a certain height too, because the coupler lift bar needs to be able to sit comfortably up here, and then it's also got to be able to run down underneath the coupler box there. I apologize, I didn't realize the model was slightly off camera there, but we now have the bracket back on, as you can see. So now we can kind of position it, and now comes the fun test. We take the coupler lift bar, position it, see what kind of positioning we're looking at, and it's not too bad, honestly. Let me see here. Yep, that works. Alright, let's go ahead and cut that stem down. On the end here, there's this little area where you can drill a hole in your coupler box, but we're not going to do that today. We're going to keep it simple. I'm going to nip that little piece off, just like that. I'm now going to take some super glue to the little bracket. I'm going to dab the glue on there. A little dab of glue on the stem because it's going to be glued underneath the coupler pocket. Again, it's optional. You can drill a hole if you want. You can position it on the outside of the box too, but in this case I'm just going to glue it entirely. And we're going to position that on, just like that. Check your clearance. Make sure that the coupler can clear both the air hose and the bracket, and as you can see, it does. And now we have a coupler lift bar and an air hose installed, and that only took minutes, literally minutes. And anyone can do this with the right parts. You can do a lot of things. You got to be creative, use the right glue, be patient, and stuff like this works every single time. So as you can see, just those little parts alone, we've added so much nice detail to this model, and it looks way more nice than it did before. You can see all that there. On the opposite end, again, there's the same parts installed and positioned, and we have the brake wheel installed as well. Now, if we really wanted to take this even further, we could get a little bit of fine chain detail, and we could run that down, drill a hole through our platform here, and then run a chain underneath. That would be pretty nice, but it serves the purpose, it looks right, and it at least gives the model a little bit more flavor. Now, a part like this was not something I was going to talk about, but in this particular case, I actually got to replace one of these. And on this end, it broke off entirely and it was too far damaged to replace, so I'm actually going to be replacing this part with a Tichy train group detail part. In this case, one of these. They pretty much make a step version or anything like this for any one of these cars. You can get all kinds of different details. So as you can see, there's the Tichy train group, and that particular piece there, which I dropped on the ground, is part number, let me see here, 3043. Part number 3043. If any of you guys want to do this, I'm going to cut one of these out, and I'm just going to simply glue it to the platform here. So now that we've got all of our nice separately applied details applied, it's time to actually paint them. And in this case, I'm going to be using some Model Master. This is, let me see here, light gray. And this is the perfect color to match what's on this car, which is a flat gall gray, as you can see. So with any kind of paint matching, you always want to try to choose a color that's going to close match. I might sometimes mix up some acrylic colors to match, which I could do for this one if I really wanted to, but since I had this, I'm using this. You don't necessarily have to run out and get a bottled paint and try to find something that's going to exactly match, because obviously some of these railroad colors can be kind of tough to actually replicate, and factory paint, of course, can always be tricky as well. So, you know, just try to find something that's close. Otherwise, you can really mix your own paint up. Do whatever you got to do, but I'm just going to be using some of this. So with the color, I'm just going to get a little bit here. We'll see how tacky this is. That's pretty good. You just want to get like a rough idea. You can of course always test it on the most least important part. For example, like this coupler bracket here, and just kind of blend it together. I'll generally try to blend the colors together as best I can. There's only so much you can do. Also keep in mind that I'm going to be weathering this, but if you're going to be just leaving it as is and you're just going to seal this up, you want to be a little bit more precise, but I'm not too worried if it doesn't exactly match, because parts on these cars get replaced all the time, and you know, things don't necessarily match. A lot of times they just do really basic primer patch jobs and things like that when things get repaired. So don't stress this too much if it's not a perfect match. Just try to match all the parts that you've added. Just get them painted up. You might have to go back and do a couple coats, but just get everything matched together so that everything's covered. Here is the exact same car now all completed. After we got all the paint matching done and we got all the detail parts blended together, you can see everything looks just like it was built that way, like it was never changed. You can see that grab iron is installed, the brake wheel's installed. Once it's all weathered, everything just blends in and looks normal. And it's a great way to improve these cars, because now we have a model that looks 10 times better than it did originally. And of course it's complemented with some nice weathering, a little bit of patchworks, all kinds of detail work like that. But it's a great way again to spruce up simple older models like this and give them a fresh take on life, in other words. So hopefully these techniques inspire you guys to try this. Obviously we can't all afford high-end models, but what we can do is spruce up the models that we do have. Even an old Athearn Blue Box car can look good. I used to detail those up when I was a kid before I could even afford these nicer models, these kind of mid-range price point kind of cars that are relatively cheap now. Back then I could only afford the Blue Box cars, and I learned how to detail those too. Any old model like this can be improved if you just put the effort into it. So again, hopefully this inspires you guys to try some of these techniques on your own. These detail parts are all very easy to find. All you got to do is do some eBay searching, find Tichy air hoses, coupler lift bars, get yourself some couplers. Anything like that is relatively easy to find. Brass wire. If there's anything you guys need help with, of course, just leave some comments and I'll try to do my best to reply to them. But in the meantime, thank you for watching this video, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Take it easy. Thanks for watching.